Today was an event that culminated a year-long pilot project to implement complete streets in Baton Rouge.
It is a community issue because if you make streets safe for the older members of the family, then you've made them safe for everybody.
Well, thank you all for being here. My name is Jessica Kemp. I'm the Vice President of Policy and Advocacy for the Center for Planning Excellence. So welcome to our Healthy Hometowns session. I want to first say thank you to our sponsor for this session, which is Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Louisiana. And before I introduce our speaker, I just want to say a couple things about health in Louisiana. In Louisiana, we love our food and our drinks and our cars and our trucks, mostly trucks. We love sitting around, drinking beer, snacking, and watching football. And I bet you know where I'm going with this. We're also one of the most obese states in the nation, and our health is suffering because of it. As of 2016, Louisiana's adult obesity rate was 35.5%. If you include the number of adults who are overweight, more than 65% of our population is overweight or obese. This is so important because obesity is linked to diabetes, which is a huge problem in Louisiana, as well as heart disease, stroke, and several types of cancer. So this is a big problem. It's cutting lots of lives short, creating heartbreak for families. It's expensive, costing families, employers, and the government a lot of money in healthcare costs and lost productivity. So where do we look for solutions? Well, according to the Kaiser Family Foundation and a host of other public health experts, healthcare per se, that is visiting your doctor and medical interventions and treatments, accounts for only 10% of what actually constitutes your health. Our built environment accounts for more than twice that. It has a very significant impact on our health, along with individual behaviors and genetics. So while access to quality health care is absolutely important, we now know that we should be taking a more holistic approach to public health, recognizing the ways in which our built environment keeps us safe, the ways it makes it easier or harder for us to be active on a daily basis, the way it makes it easier or harder to get around using active transportation, such as walking or biking, and the ways in which it affects our ability to access healthy food and jobs. Sorry, page turn. This is all part of the growing recognition of the critical importance of the social determinants of health. Many of you have probably heard what has now become kind of a mantra for this movement, that a person's life expectancy is predicted more by her zip code than his or her genetic code, meaning that all else being equal, a person who lives in a high crime area with limited access to parks, sidewalks, quality transit, job opportunities, and healthy foods is predictably going to have poorer health outcomes than if that same person lived in an area that offers easy access to all of those amenities. And that is what we are here to talk about. How do we build cities and towns that promote the best possible health outcomes for all of its residents? Our speaker today has literally been there and done that. Some of you may have had the opportunity to hear Chip Johnson speak in our last panel, but Chip Johnson is here with us today. He's the former mayor of Hernando, Mississippi. Hernando is a town of about 15,000 people, and Mayor Johnson was a leading figure in addressing public health issues throughout the city, promoting healthy eating and active living. As mayor, Johnson helped establish a new city parks department that built 5 major parks and other recreation facilities that enjoy wide use among Hernando residents. He led the way to making Hernando more pedestrian and bicyclist friendly by passing a complete streets policy, requiring every new street to have a sidewalk, and developing miles of new bicycle lanes. Also, under Mayor Johnson's leadership, the city worked with local schools on joint use agreements, which allowed school facilities to be open to city residents during non-school hours. Providing more healthy food options was another top priority for Mayor Johnson. He helped start the Hernando Farmers Market, which has grown into the largest in Mississippi and is regularly ranked one of the most popular in the nation. Mayor Johnson worked with local schools through the Eat Right, Play More program, promoting healthier foods in the cafeteria and in vending machines. He promoted extra recess time and safe routes to school projects to help students safely walk or bike to and from school. This school district is now home to 12 Project Fit America playgrounds. Mayor Johnson's efforts led the Blue Cross and Blue Shield Foundation to name Hernando as the healthiest hometown in Mississippi in 2010, a designation accompanied by a $50,000 grant for health and wellness activities. In addition, He has been recognized as a national spokesperson for obesity prevention initiatives and was one of 2 mayors invited to kick off First Lady Michelle Obama's Let's Move campaign. In 2013, Mayor Johnson received the Leadership for Healthy Communities Childhood Obesity Prevention Award. We are thrilled to have Chip Johnson here with us today. In the last panel, he said, when they declared Hernando the healthiest city in Mississippi, they weren't sure if it was true or not, but it's very clear that he made it true, and we're really excited to have him share his experience and his leadership with us today. So please join me in welcoming Chip Johnson.
Okay, I'm back. I think we're a small crowd here, so I want this to kind of be conversational if at all possible. And I think it's important as we get started for you to know where I came from and where my passion came from. I was very much an accidental public official. I was just your normal metal trades vo-tech student in high school, wasn't in student government, went straight in the Navy and rode submarines around for a few years, came back and bought a restoration company, and I had no real thoughts about health. I was young and thin just because I worked so hard, and I just, young people just don't worry about health. So it's not that had been my passion forever. And so one day my neighbors asked me, I moved to Hernando in '97, and my neighbors asked me if I would run for alderman in 2001. And by that time, I'd been in the Chamber of Commerce with my business, all the things you have to do, and I'd kind of gotten involved in the community on some level. And so I ran against a guy that had lived there his whole life, and I literally just knocked on more doors than he did because he thought he was going to win, and I accidentally became an alderman. And so during the next 4 years, I started obviously seeing what the process was about from 2001 to 2005, and I realized that Hernando was right on the edge of going one way or the other. It could go good or go bad. We knew it was about to grow, and we needed to do it in the right way. And so the mayor retired, and I thought, well, this is a chance for me to do something. And so I ran that race and won it. And in the process, and it was not easy, actually, there were 5 of us, and there ended up being a runoff between 2 of us. So I had to go back up to all my supporters and give a short little speech and say, I'm sorry, but we got to do this again in 2 weeks because it's a runoff. And my father looked at me after that and he said, man, if you don't learn to become a better speaker, you're not going to get elected. So I listened to him, and I went down to the local community college, Northwest Mississippi Community College, and I took a class in public speaking, and I got a C. So let's just get ready, put your expectations down at that level. And we're just going to kind of have fun today, and I'm going to get off topic. Sometimes I'm not going to even be talking about what's on the slide, but I hope what you're going to get out of this is my passion for it, and hopefully you will find a passion for it yourself. And I'm going to give you lots of examples of how we made and branded Hernando as the healthiest town in Mississippi. You may not be able to use those examples, but it may trigger something in your head. That's what I'm hoping, is for you to think outside the box and see what you can take back to your community. The one thing we all have in common here is that we all live somewhere. So we may not be elected, we may not be in an official capacity, but every one of us, regardless, are a citizen of something, of a parish or a county or a city. And we all have influence in that role. And I think it's very important that we realize that we have that influence. So when I got elected mayor, I ran on a parks platform and a sidewalks platform and a preservation platform because we live in a historic town with some historic buildings. And once I got elected, the Community Foundation of Northwest Mississippi was putting together a regional health council. And so I was kind of, they wanted to fill it with all kinds of people, but of course they wanted at least one elected official, so I was the token because I was the parks guy. And so I got on that council and went to the first meeting, and I said something about mandating sidewalks, and there was a lady there named Ellen Jones, and she said, that's pretty interesting that you said that. Would you come and speak at the Childhood Obesity Summit in Birmingham? And I said, well, I guess so. Now, keep in mind, up to that point, I'd only spoken in front of 40 people at the most. And my dad had told me I was terrible at it. And so I went, and I thought I was going to teach a little class. Well, she tricked me, and I was the keynote lunch speaker. And so I did it and got through it, and it all worked out fine. But what I always do when I go to conferences, including this one, is I go to the classes because I'm there to learn. I always learn more than I give, I think. And so I stayed around for the classes, and I'd never heard of an obesity summit, never knew it was a big problem. And I heard somebody say, this is the first generation of kids that might not grow up to be as old as their parents. And I think we've all heard that by now. That was the first time I'd heard it. And I literally thought that was just somebody just saying something. I thought it couldn't be true. And I went back and researched it, and sure enough, the CDC was saying that. And it really grabbed me. That's the thing that got me. You know, with all the science and the data we have, how in the world are we not all living to be 110? Why are we living shorter lifespans now? And of course, we know there's 1,000 different reasons for it, but that's what piqued my passion on creating healthy communities. And I realized that everybody has a role, and as an elected official, I think we have a role to create an atmosphere and an opportunity. And y'all are going to hear me kind of pound on that. We're all Southerners here. I'm from Mississippi, y'all are from Louisiana, most of you. And by God, nobody's going to tell us what we should do, right? Just isn't going to happen. And we have to be very cognizant of that. We have to be very, very careful that we are not perceived to be telling people, by God, you'd better be healthy. And that's the way it comes across to people a lot of times. So I think our message always has to be so clear that your personal health is your personal choice. It absolutely is, until it crosses the line into my health, such as smoke-free and blowing smoke on me. But in general, that's your choice. So we have to be very careful to say that our role as elected officials is not to tell you to be healthy, but if you wake up tomorrow, like many people do on January 1, and say, I want to go lose 20 pounds, I want to try to be healthy, I need to have an atmosphere and an opportunity in place for that to happen for you. If you get ready to go for a walk and you can't safely walk around your town, you're going to throw up your hands and go right back to what you were doing. Or if you decide that cycling is something you want to do and there's no safe way for you to cycle around town, I haven't done my job. If you decide tennis is what you want to do, we need to have tennis courts. And if you think your kids need to be healthier, we need to have programs for them. And we need to have it inclusive for everybody. So there's a myriad of things, and that's where my passion comes from in creating healthy communities. So very quickly, I decided I wanted to brand Hernando around that. And we just pretty much said, we're going to be the healthiest town in Mississippi. And that was in about 06 or 07 when, I'd been in office about a year and a half, getting my feet wet. And we just started saying, we're the healthiest town in Mississippi. And we did a lot of things to get there. And I'm going to start giving you a little background. And this is Hernando. It was started in 1836. We're the county seat. There's our water tower. There's our recycling bins that I was so proud of. Being green is part of being a healthy city. We didn't have recycling when I took over. And this is not really part of being a healthy hometown, but I think it speaks to sometimes you have to take what you can get with policy. I wanted everybody to have curbside recycling and it be free and everybody be able to do it. Well, my board of aldermen did not want that. And so instead of me just fighting and digging in and saying, well, I lost, I got a little bit. We started our recycling. Each house had 2 of those. You had to sort your cans and glass in one and your paper in the other. And that's all we had, and it was every other week. So we got that small win. Instead of me just being mad about it, I said, okay, we got something. Well, the citizens very quickly said, hey, this isn't enough. We need it every week. Those are filling up. So we got the board to vote to do it every week. And then 3 years later, because we had it and people started wanting more, now we have the 90-gallon cart mixed use recycling for everybody that wants it. And we have drop-off locations. So I think that's an example of how you can start with baby steps and get to where you want if you don't just dig in. This town was 2,600 people in 1990, and it's about 16,500 today. So it's seen very, very rapid growth. That water tower, I may go ahead and just talk about it right now. It's a brand for us. Every town has to create a brand. And I think that's very important. We created the brand of the Healthy City, but we've also got this other brand of our water tower, which I know sounds a little quirky, but every city has, almost every city has some sort of a fall festival, right? And we had one, and we called it the Fall Festival, just like everybody else. And I was looking over at Oxford, Mississippi, and they've got something called the Double-Decker Festival. And they've got a double-decker bus from England, and they just branded their whole thing around this double-decker bus. Well, we found that water tower was built in 1925. It was the original water system for our town. So we just said, why don't we just change the name of our festival to the Water Tower Festival? And we did. And it sounds more exciting than the Fall Festival. And we've got the Water Tower 10K, and the shirts all have the water tower, and that's the logo we have now, is that water tower. So it helps with our brand, and everybody's got some little quirky thing that's unique, and I think you have to find it and start branding yourself. Policy is huge. And I'm not going to talk a lot about grants because, as we all know, it seems like they're starting to go away. Now I realize more than ever how huge policy is. I was mayor for 12 years, and I was a health advocate for my town, and I've been replaced with a mayor that's not really his priority. I'm not saying he's going to back it up, but it's not something he's going to fight for like I did. So the policies we put in place are vital. Those things stay. It's hard to undo policies. We became the 7th city in Mississippi to go comprehensively smoke-free back in 2007. And it was a heck of a fight. And did the state of Louisiana go smoke-free? No. Okay. Mississippi is not either. And it was a tough fight for us. I didn't know that there were advocates out there to help me. I was still so new. I thought, well, we'll just do it. And it was horrible. You literally felt like 100% of the people were against you. Of course, you got to step back and realize, the data shows only 21% of them are against you. But they're all talking and nobody else talks. But we became the first predominantly Republican city to go smoke-free. And there had been 6 cities before us, and then it just stagnated. And it's like once we did it, they said, wait a minute, if Hernando can do it, maybe the rest of us should. And between then and now, which is just 10 years later, Mississippi has 153 comprehensively smoke-free cities. And they just got their first comprehensively smoke-free county, which is a big deal. So that policy will probably never be overturned. There would be a huge outcry. That policy is there. The joint use agreement policies we have in place are huge for us. And I talked about it earlier. I'm sorry if you may have to be hearing it for a second time. But we can't afford a lot in Hernando because we don't tax our people very much. They don't want to be taxed. So everything we do, we try to do it as cheaply as possible. And we wanted to start a basketball league. Well, of course, we couldn't build a $2 million gym. And even if we could, it wouldn't make sense because the taxpayers already own 4 gyms in town. They just happen to be attached to the schools. And I had to remind everybody, the citizens especially, that those belong to us. It makes no sense for them to be locked up every day and us build another one. And the same thing with the school playgrounds. It makes no sense to lock those up and us build neighborhood playgrounds when there's a neighborhood school with a locked up playground. So we went to the state legislature and worked very hard for 2 years. You can never get anything past the first year, but we got it past the second year. And we have a joint use agreement in state law. So if a city uses a school facility, then the liability automatically is on the city. So that takes away the whole liability argument. So now we're running basketball programs and after-school programs, all kinds of things in the schools without having to build additional facilities. This park was the park that was built on policy. When I took office, we had just had this 200-acre development come in. And in our developments, we mandate sidewalks, of course. We started doing that in 2002. But we also mandate a 10% set-aside for parkland. So in this 200-acre development, this developer had just had to give us 20 acres. And so right when I took office, I had 20 acres, and suddenly the citizens expected a park there. But we had no money. We had 20 acres with a pond. So we went in search of grants. We got a wildlife and fisheries grant for $150,000, and in 2006 or 7, that got us a quarter-mile walking track, 8 feet wide, a gazebo, and 9 parking spots. But suddenly we had a park. And then we worked with the United Way, which does this all over the place. They said they wanted us to build a trail somewhere so they could do an interactive thing for the kids. And they partner with Home Depot to do these all over the country. And we said, we can't afford to build a trail, but we've already got one. Can we just use this one? So they bring in the Girl Scouts and they put up little signs on the trail and they paint things on the trail. And they're pretty interesting. These trails that United Way does are for a parent or an adult of any age to be with a small child. And the sign will tell you what to do. You may come to one sign that says, have your child pretend to be a butterfly, or have your child play hopscotch right here. And there's about 12 of those signs around that park. That's one of them. I can't tell what it says. But it gets people of all ages out into your park. Another thing we did is when Walmart decided to locate there, we twisted their arm just a little bit. It didn't take much because Walmart has money they like to put into communities. They like to do that. Their managers have some discernment about where they spend that money. They gave us $25,000, and that got us a seven-year-old and under playground equipment there. Then we waited a couple of years, got another wildlife and fisheries grant, and built bathrooms. I forgot you got to have bathrooms at parks. That was a big deal. But we also learned a lesson. We put in another quarter-mile of walking track, and we had learned 8 feet was not big enough because we also put bicycles on it. You need a minimum of 10 feet, and it's the little details that will get you. But if you're going to have bicycles and pedestrians passing, it's got to be at least 10 feet wide. It's just a small thing. And on your sidewalks, they need to be at least 5 feet wide. Why is that important? If they're not 5 feet wide, you have to walk single file. Well, nobody wants to walk single file on sidewalks with their friends. So those are just some small details that I learned from an American Planning Association conference I went to. So we built this park with our policies. The farmers market is something we're very proud of, and I could give an hour speech on the farmers market. I had 3 people come to me and say it's time to start a farmers market in Hernando. And we used to have one, but it's not here anymore. Nobody really knew why it stopped. And there were 2 members of the Chamber of Commerce and my community development director that was on my staff. And so I partnered with those, so the 4 of us decided to start this farmers market. And if you get ready to do something like this, you have got to have some people who are willing to work because it takes some time and effort. And they said, this was about June, and they said, let's just start planning it this summer and then let's start it next year. And I said, no, let's just start it now. I'm one of those people who just likes to start things. So by the time we got it started, it was the 1st of July, and we were just about out of tomatoes by then, and the watermelons were just about gone, and it was not the right time to start it, but we did start it. And by October, when we shut it down, we had 23 vendors. And I thought, wow, this is the best thing ever. We have a 23 vendor farmers market. Well, we took the winter off, we actually got with the county agent and held training sessions and talked with our farmers through the winter. Some of them decided to grow more stuff. Some of them were learning from our county agent how to properly can things so that they could be sold at a USDA certified market, which we were going to strive to become. And if you'll think back, right about then is when that recession hit. There were very literally some people who were out of work who this became their new job. This farmers market created jobs. But the main reason I was starting it wasn't about health and access to healthy food. I was starting this farmers market because my court square was about 40% vacant. And I wanted to drive people downtown on the weekends. And that worked. Our court square is now 100% occupied, 100%. There is not one vacant place on that square, and people are building new buildings down the side streets. And I credit this farmers market with being a huge piece of that. We now have over 1,000 people every Saturday show up on our little square, out of a town of 16,000. So we're bringing in people from other places. I think the way we got it going is we literally worked. I'll go back to what I was saying about work. Me and the guy from the Chamber of Commerce every Saturday morning went down to the city shop, put 6 big garbage cans in the back of my truck, brought them to the square. Then we went down behind one of the buildings off the square and loaded the porta potty in the back of my truck and brought it up there. And we did it every Saturday while the 2 ladies, the one on staff and the one from the Chamber of Commerce, they wrangled all the vendors because those vendors are worse than kids. They're all fighting over who gets the best spot, and so didn't really grow those tomatoes. And It's hard. There's a lot to a farmer's market. So we did this for the first year and a half, and then we hired a market manager. And we started charging these people. And they said, well, why should we pay you $5 when we can go out on the side of the road? Well, our answer was because we're dragging people in here. You're not going to sell as much on the side of the road. You're going to make back your $5 here. And now we're up to $15 after 10 years in it. But what we did with that money is we paid the market manager, and we did a little bit of advertising. So the market manager's incentive at that point was she got half the money. So the more vendors she got, the more money she got. It made perfect sense. Finally, we got the library to start opening the library. Then we got the courthouse to open up so we didn't have to bring the porta potty anymore. We got some permanent, beautiful garbage cans out there. We started growing the market. And now, fast forward, we've got 120 vendors on our list. They don't all show up at the same time. We usually have about 45 vendors out there every Saturday of some sort. We are selling meat products, and we're selling canned goods, and we are a USDA certified market. The reason that's important in Mississippi is for two reasons. People have a sense of safety and security when they're buying their food if it's a USDA certified market. The other big thing for convenience is that if you're a USDA certified market, you don't have to charge sales tax in the state of Mississippi. And it's not a lot of money, but it's the issue of trying to collect that sales tax from all those vendors. It's just a nightmare. So we stay USDA certified, and as part of that certification, we have to make sure that a certain percentage of our vendors are food vendors. You can't have more than, I think it's about 30% can be other things like people that weave baskets or sharpen knives, people who don't sell food. But we try to make sure it's things that feel like they're at a farmer's market. You can't come out there and sell t-shirts or things of that nature. And we've always got a featured nonprofit. The Animal Rescue Group will be there one week and the Girl Scouts will be there another week. And we were trying to find ways to get more people to come, and I stole another idea from Covington, Louisiana. I went to the farmer's market over there, and they had a guy playing guitar with a tip jar out. I thought, this is great. It feels so different with that live music. And so we started having music. About every third week, we'll have live music out at our market, and it draws a lot of people. And now every Saturday, one Saturday a month, we have Senior Day. The AARP participates in that, and we just have various things for the seniors. About every other week, we have a lady come out and do things for the kids. She'll do like mother and baby yoga or do a children's exercise class. So we're doing other things in conjunction with it. The thing we wanted to be very, very careful about, we know these things almost always become a place where people of higher income show up. That just happens. And we wanted to make sure it was accessible to everyone. So the reason we have it on our court square is we have a neighborhood that is a poorer, economically depressed neighborhood 2 blocks from there. And I wanted to make it accessible where those people, if they wanted to come to the market, could walk. Well, just having it near enough wasn't enough. So we started a long process, and it's a hard process, to take SNAP benefits there. We now take SNAP benefits. Then we worked on the process to take WIC benefits, so we can take WIC benefits there at our market. Then we got a grant, and we're doubling SNAP benefits. So why is that important? We're basically saying if you will come spend your SNAP money on healthy, locally grown food, we'll give you twice as much. And that's really getting people there. And then you have the problem of some people might feel a stigma about spending the SNAP tokens there. So we now, and this is a money raiser actually, we have a full-time person at the market who sits at a table and is the kind of the hub of the market. She sells t-shirts that say farmer's market and bags, and those make a little revenue for advertising. But she also, many of us will go to the farmer's market and all of a sudden we're out of cash. We bought more than we thought we were going to buy. There is no ATM machine on my square. So we are the ATM machine now. So when you come up, we're going to give you not cash, but we're going to give you farmer's market tokens. And of course, all of those don't ever get spent, so we make a little money on the ones that just don't come back. But those are the same tokens the SNAP people are getting. So when people are spending their money, nobody knows who's spending what. And that works out very, very well. And so this market started with literally $80. I remember I used to give farmers market speeches all the time, and a lady asked me one day, she said, well, how did you get the money to build the thing? And I realized I wasn't saying and being clear that there is no building. It's an open air market. We literally have trucks back in the parking spots around the sidewalk that's the perimeter of our courthouse. Very occasionally it gets rained out. That's just part of the deal. But we have the largest farmers market in the state of Mississippi, and it was started with an $80 loan from the Chamber of Commerce to buy a banner that said Hernando Farmers Market. So it's not rocket science, but there's a lot to learn through the process, and we're always open in Hernando. The market manager still will visit with anybody that wants to learn how to start a farmer's market and make it great. But it's not only an economic driver for our downtown, it's created jobs for lots of people that do these markets, that come to the market, and it's making this food, this locally grown food, available to people. And it's just a great addition to society. It gets us all together. All walks of life are out there. There are kids out there throwing balls. There are people singing. My mother does the senior line dancing deal with them out there. There's a lady over there helping mothers with babies on their back do yoga. I mean, it's just the coolest thing ever. It just makes your town feel like everybody's coming together. So there's about 1,000 reasons you need a farmer's market in your town. Okay, this one was a big win, and it took about 1.5 years to get done. We're going back to the recession. A lot of developers lost everything, right? The banks foreclosed on all this property, and there was a 70, let me think. It was about a 45-acre parcel that Renaissance Bank had taken away from a developer. Well, in our town, we had about 5 other subdivisions with all the streets put in already, hundreds of vacant lots that the banks owned as well. But this one didn't have the streets put in. It was just a parcel. And I went to Renaissance Bank, and I said, you know, you're going to sit on this for 10 years, literally. I mean, somebody's going to build houses on all these other vacant lots, and this one's just going to sit here. And if any of you are bankers, you know that banks don't like to have properties on their books. It doesn't look good. It's not how they make money. And I convinced them over 1.5 years that the best thing they could do with this property was to give it to the city of Hernando. And we would name it Renaissance Park. And so we took a couple of acres up front on the highway. They kept those. We upzoned them to highway commercial, which is exactly what they should have been anyway. It wasn't even really a negotiation. And so they kept those and gave us a road right down the middle of them and then 39 acres behind it. So all of a sudden, we have this Renaissance Park. And when that happened, everybody started saying, well, here's everything that needs to go in this park. And people would say football, and people would say baseball, and people would say soccer. Well, we got a little of this over here and a little of that over there. And we realized quickly that we needed a comprehensive plan for a park system, much like you have a comprehensive plan for a city. So I was really, really surprised that my Board of Aldermen voted to give us $60,000 to hire an outside firm and do a comprehensive park plan. And we had citizens come to multiple meetings, multiple, just over and over. And we finally decided, here's what should be in this park. And there were a whole myriad of things we figured should be in the park. It was going to cost $22 million to build this park. Well, we don't have $22 million. There's no way. Our whole annual budget is $20 million. And we got 158 employees. We've got 3 full-time fire stations, 45 policemen, planning department, public works department. We're running ambulances. You know, we're doing all that for $20 million. So there was no money. We knew this. But I had what I needed. I had a plan. And so when the skate park people came to me, the skateboarders, they said, we want a skate park. And I said, well, there's no money. So this guy named Edward, who at the time was 58, and he was an old surfer guy, but he was retired on disability, he said, all I want you to do is tell me I've got an acre of ground, and I'm going to go raise the money. So I brought him before the Board of Aldermen, and I said, this parks plan says there's supposed to be a skate park here. Will y'all set aside this acre, and he'll go raise the money? And they said yes. And so Edward went and literally begged at the farmer's market every Saturday for 2 years and raised $40,000. Now, I'm going to back up just a little, and it's probably in a slide further down, but I found out that people don't want to give money to cities. As an elected official, they didn't trust me with their money. It's just the way it is. But they will give money to a community foundation all day long. They can get a receipt, they can do a tax write-off. So we started a thing called the Parks and Recreation Foundation at the Community Foundation. So they have all these subsets. There's the Friend of the Skate Park, the Friend of Baseball, the Friend of Soccer, the Friends of the Dog Park, the Friends of Football, and all of them have their own little pot of money, and there's a board of directors that govern that money. I wasn't on it. Nobody elected was on it. It was completely citizen-driven. So he started putting that money in the Community Foundation and the Friends of the Skate Park. Well, when he had enough for match money, we found out that the Department of Wildlife and Fisheries, the Recreational Trails Department, would build skate parks. They had done one in another town. I have no idea why, but they will. So we took his money, used it as match money to get $100,000. Next thing you know, we've got the greatest skate park in 6 states around us. People are coming from all over the country to this skate park, literally having to drive down a gravel road because we still have nothing. We don't even have a sign in that park. All we know is there's a little skate park back there down a gravel road. But we got the skate park, and now they're raising money for phase 2. And because I knew what was supposed to be there, the Frisbee golf people come. They said, we want to do Frisbee golf. Well, some of the aldermen said, that doesn't make any sense. Nobody wants to do that. And I said, wait a minute. This plan that we paid money for says Frisbee golf is supposed to be in this park. So they've told the Frisbee golf people that they can do that, so they're out raising money now. So that one's coming. In the meantime, a group came and wanted to put in a dog park. And I said, well, let's put it in that first park I showed y'all, Lee Summit. Well, there were houses around there. All those people in those houses came and threatened to just throw me under the bus and just run over me because some dog was going to kill their children. You know, and it was the craziest thing I'd ever heard, but I backed off real quick because they just didn't want it. Didn't want the dog park, and I said, well, wait a minute. I remember that comprehensive plan thing said there was a dog park supposed to be over here. So they started raising money, and to date, they've raised $45,000. They fenced in 1.5 acres, sodded it, and put all the stuff in there, and we opened a dog park 2 weeks ago with no tax dollars. Now, of course, the citizens are going to have to pay taxes to upkeep it all. Well, in the middle of all that, since things started happening in there, the board finally realized they had to allocate money. So now we've got a paved road. So Renaissance Park is under construction. It's got a paved road. It's got a dog park. It's got a skate park. And we've applied for a wildlife fisheries trail grant. And the important thing to know about a trail grant that you learn these things as you go along. A trail has a trail head. And a trail head has a bathroom. So we still don't have a bathroom down there with that dog park. You know, we got a porta potty again. But if we get this grant, the trailhead for that trail is going to serve these other 2 things. And so you've got to be thinking outside the box. But we're slowly building this park with no real tax dollars. And Renaissance Bank's tickled to death because every time we do anything, we have to say the dog park at Renaissance Park, the skate park at Renaissance Park. So their name is getting mentioned over and over as a good corporate citizen. We like to do odd things, and we always try to, like I said, do more than one thing at a time. So we had a Boy Scout that did a Eagle project, and he did a historic walking tour. And these are things that we can do that are free, and that's part of community building and building a healthy town. So we took that a step further, and we organized a walk with the citizens. We had the head of the museum walk us through these historic areas. And some of the people would actually stand out in front of their house and give a 5-minute speech about their house. And while we were doing that, we told them how many calories they were burning while they were walking. We gave them a healthy snack. But the thing I was very purposeful about is I walked them through a couple of neighborhoods they might not have felt comfortable walking through before, which was if you will notice this picture, this is a Blues Trail marker, but the building behind there is the county jail. And of course, you usually don't have very high-end houses around a county jail, and I walked them through that neighborhood. And the thing we got out of that was these people were saying, well, this isn't as unsafe as I thought it was. Just, a lot of people have the perception that low-income neighborhoods are unsafe. So we started dragging people through there, and that really helped that. And I'm going to get off topic again, but this is very important. In our small town, we can generally only afford one of everything. So we have one farmer's market. We put it within walking distance of our poorest neighborhood. We were able to build one community center. We built it on the edge of our poorest neighborhood where people could walk to it. What that does is it gets the entire community is going to go to that community center, right? So they're putting their eyes on a part of town that they never really noticed before, never paid a lot of attention to. And that has paid off in huge dividends because the more they're over there, the more that people of different economic classes mix together, and Ms. Coletta was talking about that earlier, how important that is. And we started helping people, having the people of more means, helping the people of lesser means by doing home rebuilds. There's a church that once a quarter picks a house in the poorer neighborhoods, and all their church members come over and they may paint it, they may replace rotten boards on it. Things of that nature are going on now. We were able to get one Safe Routes to School grant, which I'll mention, I'll go into more detail on later, but we did it in that poorest neighborhood. When we had a community garden, it was in that neighborhood. So you try to be purposeful about where you put things so that you're inclusive, and the social justice piece of it is just huge. Okay, bicycle friendly. When I took office, there was one lady that rode her bike in town. When I moved there in '97, and they called her the crazy bike lady. And now, fast forward, we have a bike club with over 70 members. We have bike lanes. And here's how we started getting those bike lanes. I found out early on, when I became mayor, I didn't know, but I was on the design and review committee when a new subdivision was coming. So my public works director was in there, my planning director, a couple other people, and me, and the fire chief and the police chief. And so the guy's talking about the streets, and the fire chief says, well, you got to make this street wider. And I said, Chief, why do we have to make that street wide? And he said, well, so my fire truck can turn around in the street. And I said, well, why do you have to turn a fire truck around in a street? That doesn't make sense to me. He said, well, if we're going to fire and we miss the place, or we have to turn around and we don't know where we're at. And I said, Chief, that just doesn't make sense. And I found out that the fire chief had literally been making them build wide streets through every neighborhood. And I said, well, we're just not going to do it anymore. And I said, if you miss a house, just turn around in somebody's yard and I'll pay to fix their yard. 12 years later, I've never fixed a yard. So we were doing this for no good reason. But these streets were already there. Lots of these old neighborhoods, you'll see down the main street, for no reason, you've got a 50-foot wide street. So what do we do as normal people? If we're driving down that street, we're going to drive fast, aren't we? We can't help it. The wider it is, the faster we drive. Even if we're trying to drive slow, we're not going to. So what I found out you can do is hire a company and buy some paint, and you measure in 6 feet from the curb on each side, and you just stripe some bike lanes. It's not that expensive, and the added bonus is that it visually narrows that street and traffic slows down. So you've got bike lanes and slower traffic, which is just better for everybody. So we slowly did some of these things around town, striped some bike lanes here, striped a few there, and we were doing it on the wide streets. And then the Community Foundation I was telling y'all about earlier gave us a very small grant to stripe some more bike lanes. And I said, here's where they need to be. And my community development director said, I don't know about that. She said, why don't you talk to the bike club? And I said, well, I'm smarter than everybody. I'll just say where they go. But she convinced me I wasn't. And she was absolutely right. We brought in the advocates, the cyclists, the bike club, and they told us where they wanted the bike lanes. And of course, it made way better sense than what I had planned. And all of this worked towards a goal. You know how an interstate divides a city? Literally divides a city. You can't walk under it, you can't cycle under it, there's no sidewalks. You just can't get over there unless you're in a car. And we have that situation in our town. But back in the early 60s when they were putting in the Interstate 55, I didn't know this, and now I look at them and see them everywhere. But when that interstate came through Mr. Smith's farm, they had to put a box culvert under it so he could drive his tractor or run his cattle through there. You're driving over those things every day and you don't even notice it. Well, there was one of them that the farmland had all gotten bought up, and there was no farm or nothing to run under there anymore. And so the highway department just owned it and wouldn't let any cars go under it. There was a high school and a middle school on one side of it, an elementary school on the other. So all the teachers would come to high school with their young kids, A bus would load those kids up, drive them around the interstate to that elementary school, which was literally a block away. So we officially adopted, we were the first city in the state to adopt one of those box culverts. And we planted some bushes around it, put some bollards up so a car cannot drive under it. Only pedestrians or cyclists can get under it. And now we have a way to safely get under the interstate as a pedestrian or a cyclist. But the added little bonus was now they don't have to ride that bus either. They've eliminated a bus route. Those kids just walk under there and go to their elementary school. So there's a million different reasons that this is important. And here's things you can do that don't cost you any money. We did a ride to the farmer's market. There's a group called Miracles in Motion that rides a big bike. We encourage them to come through our town. All major cities do the MS 150. Have y'all heard of that? These guys and girls get on their bikes and drive 75 miles one way, spend the night somewhere, and come back 75. Well, I make sure that we are the lunch stop. And I'm purposeful about that. So they come to Hernando and stop for lunch. Now, of course, the ones who are trying to win just keep going. But while they're stopped there for lunch, what are we doing on our square? We got the farmer's market going on. We got a band going. Everybody's, so what better thing to do than to catch all these people who can afford $3,000 bicycles on your square, and they're probably going to come back and spend some money later, maybe even move there. And so we got the FedEx rock and roll, yeah, that's the MS 150, and the bike lane striping we talked about. We do a ride to work day, and this is going to sound just goofy, and it kind of is, but most of our people go to Memphis, right? There is no way, actually there is a way, there is one guy who rides his bicycle from Hernando to Memphis, and I don't know how he does it, because there's no safe way to do it. But we do a bike to work day, and we'll buy some sausage from one of our local vendors at the farmer's market, make some biscuits, and everybody will get on their bikes and ride up to the square, and we'll celebrate National Bicycle Day, Bike to Work Day, and then they'll all ride back home, get in their cars, and go to work. But at least we're talking about it, and we're getting it to be top of mind. And we got another law passed in Mississippi that when you go around a bicyclist in a car, you have to stay at least 3 foot away from them. You really have to give them a 3-foot berth. And so we got all these big signs that say 3 feet, it's the law. Those are really starting to change perceptions, because I'm pretty sure Louisiana is much like Mississippi, where you have lots of people who say those dang bicycles just don't belong on the road. I mean, literally, people will throw things at you sometimes. And so we're having to change perceptions and let them know there's a state law that says those bicyclists can be there. There's one other ride we do. I don't know if it's on there. Yeah, the Ride of Silence. That one's pretty cool. It's a ride that commemorates people who have been killed while cycling. It's kind of somber. But there's a national day that everybody does it, and nobody talks. But what you do is you start riding right at dusk, and you have a police escort because you're riding at dusk in a big group, but nobody talks for 6 miles. But you ride slow enough so anybody, even if you don't cycle, anybody can go on this 6-mile ride because it's slow. And it just kind of brings bicycle safety to top of mind. And once again, it's something you can do for free. So we've been doing all these things, and there's the National League of Bicyclists, and they designate bicycle-friendly cities, right? And we're still not anywhere near being a bicycle-friendly city. We're doing the best we can with the limited money we have. But we submitted an application because I wanted them to give me the list back of the things we weren't doing right. And I knew we weren't going to make it, but I wanted that list. And so they gave us the list. Well, in the meantime, they said, by the way, you're an honorable mention for bicycle-friendly cities. So, what do? We called the paper, of course, and told them, hey, we're one of only 2 cities in Mississippi that got an honorable mention. Of course, we're still not bike-friendly, but we PR'd it. And that's another slide in here somewhere. Maybe it's that one. This is it. That one worked out. You have got to toot your own horn and tell your story every day. Much like we may not be the healthiest city in Mississippi, but Blue Cross Blue Shield named us the first one ever in 2010, and nobody can take that away from us. And they just named us it again in 2017, just this year. And so we tell everybody every day we're the healthiest city in Mississippi. And just picture if you're a media person, if you're someone who has to write for a paper, you got to hand in 2 or 3 stories every day. You're going to be tired. You're going to have deadlines. And you have to make sure that the people in charge are friendly to the media. And help your elected officials be friendly to the media. Do whatever it takes to convince them this is important. The media always knew that if they called me at 10 o'clock at night, I was going to call them back. I was never going to avoid them, even if it was a bad story. I was not going to avoid them. Well, the way they pay you back for being that accessible is they'll call you sometimes and say, have you got a story? Well, of course I've got a story. And I'm not going to tell them a bad one. So we've always got some positive press we're putting out. And if you go look at sign up on the Facebook page or the Twitter account for the city of Hernando, you're going to see some positive story almost every day. They're just generating out there. Because you've got something good you can say every day. So we ended up, after all these years of doing these things, Everyday Health was this program. They came and filmed in our town for 4 days, and it aired in 92% of all the ABC markets nationally. And I know it reran at least 5 times, so national exposure there. Money Magazine named us the top 100 best places to live. CNN put us on their Small Town series. We talked about the other one, Preserve America. Tree City USA, Playful City USA. Have y'all heard of those? Anybody can get a Tree City USA or a Playful City USA designation. It's just another way to put yourself out there. It just takes a little bit of application time and doing some things. I'm going to hit the next slide. I think we're getting close. This was just a partnership, and this thing's not built, by the way. What is built is a stage down at the bottom of it. We've got a natural bowl in our park that we want to build an amphitheater, and the Young Women's Club came and built the stage. They spent $20,000 on the stage, so we're getting there with the partnership. And I think I'm going to delve into that with the civic projects for a minute. We've got all these Friends of the Parks groups, and our people just don't want to be taxed. We tried to do a pennies for your parks thing where we added a penny to your sales tax when you ate food at a restaurant. That's all, just at restaurants. The restaurant community acted like it was going to kill them, went again, just held a full campaign, and our people voted down that 1 cent tax. That 1 cent tax would have funded this $22 million parks program. But since the citizens decided not to tax themselves, now when they came to my office asking for something around parks, I could say, well, you got to go find the money. That's all there is to it. And it's working, though. Not in a huge way, but in a small way, the citizens are literally stepping up to the plate. We've already talked about the dog park and the skate park. We built some soccer fields on an old sewer lagoon, and we literally, as part of reclaiming those sewer lagoons, I said, well, let's just make the land very flat so that one day we can play soccer out there. Well, somewhere that got misconstrued by the citizens that I'd promised them soccer fields, when all I said was, we got some flat land here. Because we started our soccer program and got up to 550 kids a year playing soccer on a piece of borrowed land that we didn't own. So we knew we had to do something. So the Friends of Soccer started raising money, and they irrigated the soccer fields. They also lobbied the Board of Aldermen to do a bond issue and light 2 of the fields and build a concession stand. And in the meantime, they're raising another $50,000, and they're going to pave the parking lot. So the citizen engagement has been huge. We also had 2 tennis courts that didn't have a bathroom. It's per square foot, this park's our most used park. It's got 2 tennis courts and a small playground for little kids. So what you see happening a lot of times is the parents are playing tennis, the kids are playing on the playground because it's fenced off. But there was only a porta potty. For some reason, the city just never wanted to build bathrooms before. But we just didn't have money to build them. I mean, a 2-stall bathroom with a female and a male side costs $30,000 when it's done at cost. But a lot of the ladies, the Young Women's Club, decided, well, we play tennis there, our kids are at the park. They literally held a fundraiser, and they built the most beautiful, I call it the bathroom mahal. I mean, it's the most gorgeous bathroom you've ever seen, but they did it because they wanted it. And those things are really starting to happen across the city. The soccer's happening. The tennis people are raising money once again. I got in trouble with people a long time ago because I resurfaced 2 of the tennis courts. And of course, the football people came at me, and the baseball people came at me, and the soccer people said, why'd you do that when we have all these other needs? And I said, because they walked in my office and said, we'll get grant money to pay for half of it. And that's a big thing. When you walk into an elected official's office and ask for something, in my case, and I think in most elected officials' cases, we really probably want to do the same thing you want to do. But we've got two major problems. We don't have enough money and enough staff to handle it. So when you go in to talk to an elected official, it always helps to say, I'm willing to lead the effort, and I think I know where there's a grant and I'll apply for it. That raises you to the top of the list for certain. And I was just told I have 5 minutes, so we're going to run through this. This one was a really fun one. I have to tell this one. These were Girl Scouts on a gold project. These girls have all been through college and are grown-ups now. But they still know that they started the renovation of the sidewalks in Hernando. In 1910, the city spent $10,000 on sidewalks in downtown. I've looked through all the minutes. That was the last time the city had ever spent money on sidewalks. It was 1910. So y'all could see what they would look like. You can envision it. You know, some of them are just missing, grass growing over them, tree roots have humped them up. So these Girl Scouts took the downtown area, got with our GIS department, and came back with a map and threw it up on the screen in my office. And they were playing that Queen song, Bicycle, in the background. And so we were rocking out in my office, and they would just click on it, and it would show a piece of sidewalk that looked awful, and they'd rank it A to D. And I said, this is incredible. So I brought them to the Board of Aldermen meeting and had them show it to the board. And of course, they all brought their parents. So of course, the board was impressed as well, and the board clapped, and all their parents are staring at them. And then the next item on the agenda, I was asking them for $50,000 to do sidewalks. So the city finally spent some more money on sidewalks. And these girls are the reason why. They led that community effort, and we started doing redoing sidewalks around our downtown square, which helped for pedestrian access. These are free helmets that we got for kids. We do have a law that children are supposed to wear helmets. We have never written anybody a ticket. What we do is the policemen hand them a helmet. They don't all wear them, but at least they've got one. That's the first sidewalk we built or redid. So that was one you couldn't walk on, and now you can. I'm just going to skip through this stuff and end with this one thought. There's a lot of, I would hope that most of us in here know that creating a healthy community is the right thing to do. It's just the right thing to do. You know, we want to make an atmosphere for people that want to be healthy. But some people don't believe that totally, so we need to be able to put dollars and cents with it. There is an economic reason to be healthy. Businesses that come to your town want workers that show up. Well, workers that aren't healthy don't show up. They just don't. And most companies are providing health insurance. Those health insurance rates are higher for unhealthy people. So businesses are looking for a healthy community. And they're looking for lots of other things. You've got to just have an overall quality community. And I have always believed the mantra that community development has to precede economic development. Community development precedes economic development. We used to think, well, if we get Amazon to come in, it's going to solve all our problems, right? Well, we heard the speaker earlier today say Amazon ain't coming if you don't have a good town to bring them to. So we have been building a good town in Hernando. And our governor and the Mississippi Development Authority love to give hundreds of millions of dollars to companies and cut ribbons. Well, we had a company locate in Tunica County next to us, and the money that I can track and trace that was public, the state gave them $14 million to do that, and they make pipe. Well, most of their people lived in my town because of the health disparities. If y'all go to countyhealthrankings.com, y'all need to look at that site. DeSoto County is number 1 in Mississippi. Tunica County, which is next to us, is about number 72 out of 82. So we go from number 1 to 72 just because we drop off the bluff. So the jobs were there, but most of the people lived in my town. They got a new contract. They're starting to do a lot of pipe for drilling oil wells, and they needed to expand. They didn't expand in Tunica because their people lived in Hernando, and they bought a building at full market value. They just paid $2.5 million for this old building, spent a lot of money on it. They have made a $50 million investment and we'll be ramping up to 75 employees with 0 incentives. They got $14 million just a few years ago to go to Tunica. They came to us for nothing because they just wanted to be there. So I think that kind of tells the story on an economic level of why it is so important to create a healthy community and a quality community, because we can't just forever keep giving away the store to businesses. We can't keep incentivizing them. We just can't afford it as citizens. So we have to do everything we can to create a healthy community, or to create a quality community, and creating a healthy community is always a huge piece of that. So I will end now, and I just want to reiterate and make sure that all of you remember that you live somewhere and you have a voice where you live, and I think we should all go back to wherever we're from, most in Louisiana, and encourage our leaders just to create an atmosphere and an opportunity for good health. Thank y'all for having me.
Thank you, Chip. And we're running up against the clock, so I don't think we're going to have time for questions, but I bet you might be able to track him down in the lobby if you have a burning question. But before you all go, let's give Chip Johnson another round of applause.